I'll bring it up to her as well to make sure I can get scheduled for whatever I can make it to. But yeah,
Sure.
I'd love to talk about this.
Okay.
Sorry, Jesus, I also wanted to get your input and anything you came on the call with. But thank you, Dr. Sunshine.
No, that's fine.
Dr. Hemp is what people call me. It's kind of the nickname. Dr.
Yeah.
Hemp is what people kind of call
Dr.
me.
Ahimsa. Okay, I've been calling you Dr. Porter Sunshine, but I'll tell you Dr. Ahimsa.
Of course, it's as long as your name.
Yeah. Sorry, Jesus, go ahead.
That is fine. You run under the platform of many people are looking for something new. I'm not sure it really that's what many people are looking for. It's more about, for me, like I mentioned right there, what you bring to the table. We have many things in common. You and I, we are immigrants. In a matter of fact, I came to this country with no papers, and I'm a citizen now. And the situation right now for people of color, immigrants, and the fact that I have an accent, all those different things are even in a really huge, horrible state of, right now. So that will be one of my questions. How can you really help, especially under Trump's government, because we have to be really open, how can you really help in these issues? The other matters that I usually advocate for, and I'm in constant meetings with, of course, is about growing older, aging with the Dignity Fund, with many organizations, with DAS. I'm part of the HIV Planning Commission, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, the fact that we're having the silver tsunami almost on top of us, and San Francisco society is not ready for so many people growing older. If you have a lot of money, of course, you don't worry about it. And but the rest of us, sadly, there's a lot of people in the LGBTQ community, because of what happened in the AIDS pandemic, that they are by themselves, alone at home. The information at the Department of Health is not even there. When I ask these questions, they say that I'm asking questions 6 years ahead. But how can we get this information? Because people are dying alone at home, right? In the HIV long-term survivors community, in San Francisco, we have a huge community of people. 70% of the people living with HIV is over 50 years old. So many of these people are isolated, lonely. So for me, these questions have a lot of how can you really bring us together. Sadly, there is always all this separation of young and old and all these different things. I'm a Latino, have a young spirit, but I'm getting older. I'm 66 years old. I live with my mother, caregiving, all these elements. How can you bring us together in some way? Because if we start once again with the campaign of differences but it's about these elements. And I'm very, very worried for me, because my grandmother was, because she died, but is still my favorite person in the world. I want to advocate for the elders. I want to keep going for that. How can you help us in some way? We need young voices to advocate for us. But the reason that I'm still advocating is because sometimes young people don't do that, So what can you give us about that?
Yeah, those are both good questions. I'll start with the first one, about just what to do, especially under the current administration.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to split up, I guess, like what happens in 2026, like when I get elected there, and then what I think the future
Sure.
could be, because that's really what it drives me in this work. In 2026, I think the main way for any representative right now to be defending immigrants, people of color, and people like my parents. Like, I mean, I'm not an immigrant, but my parents are,
Yeah.
and my mom is terrified. She doesn't speak English
Yeah.
very well, and she's basically doesn't leave the house unless she's going out with my sister or
Yeah.
my dad. And I think legislators have a real role to play right now as more than just policymakers. Like legislators should be acting as organizers in the community. So, in my view, that means that means actually physically showing up, because putting your own body online. If ICE shows up in the community, like I will show up and confront them non-violently, but put the ball in their court to try to escalate the situation, because there's a real power in your position as a legislator. You should be willing to get arrested and get actually stand in front of the community you're trying to defend. And to some extent, there's a symbolic value to that as well. If I'm willing to go out there and confront these people, then that creates safety for the people I'm representing. The other side of this is, just to put a finer point on that, I've seen some people do that. Like Karen Bass did that with when ICE was showing up in Los Angeles, and she basically said, "I'm not leaving until you do," and it worked. She managed to get them out of the city. The other side of this is very proactive constituent services. Like I'm a big believer in your congressperson being someone who is doing active outreach into the communities to figure out the problems, to then try to advocate and fix them. Because your congressperson is supposed to be your main point of contact to the federal government. And so that means you aren't, some of the issues you brought up later, like if you aren't able to get information from the federal government about health services, if you aren't getting a social security check, you should be able to come to your congressperson and we advocate for you. And that does work. I helped AOC build out her constituent services office when she was her first time congressperson, and Donald Trump was president back then, doing an all-out war on immigrants. And she was in a very immigrant-heavy district in Queens. And it was pretty amazing to see how, because we took constituent services seriously, and if you just keep actually fighting and trying really hard every day, you can, eventually annoy employees enough in the federal bureaucracy to get them to go your way, right? Like they don't like being badgered by congressional representatives, but most people in Congress don't take this part of the job that seriously. And I will say Speaker Pelosi has traditionally had a pretty good constituent services office, but I have been hearing over the last few years that's become less and less of a priority for her, which I just think it's not actually acceptable when Donald Trump is president and is attacking our people. But on the larger front of how to build community, I think part of it, that is the kind of thing we're trying to do to a smaller extent with our campaign. I really believe that the way to, get people out of feeling lonely, the way to get people into community is to present a positive vision of a future that's not just fighting Trump and not just about the negativity, but trying to have a future that's really going to fix the underlying reasons that caused Donald Trump to get elected in the first place, because people have been having it harder and harder and being squeezed for years. And then having people see themselves in that, like having people actually realize that they are empowered to be a part of the movement that will make that real. And I really believe this. This is the driver for me to run. Is I think we are in our New Deal kind of moment where if after 4 years of Trump, people's lives will have gotten worse, and there's going to be this chance for Democrats to really present a different vision of a new economy that truly makes life affordable, makes the economy work for working people, brings the American dream back. And that vision has to be one that's inclusive. It can't be what I'm seeing some Democrats do. You can't be like compromising on human rights with the Republican Party and saying, we're going to throw trans people under the bus in exchange for yada, yada, yada. No, you have to present a different vision. That is an economy that's growing, that's improving everyone's lives, and that includes everybody as a part of it. And my whole view of how you make that work is very, I guess, populist, right? Like it is me showing up directly to try to help that movement coalesce. And so that means, I think you were cutting out a little bit in here, but you're saying long-term survivors living in housing in San Francisco. I'd love to actually work with that community, try to help build community there and have it be an empowered community, right? That has access to power, that has access to actually advocating for themselves. That's just my view of how you should be a representative.
Anytime, Dr. Hames, that you have any other question or something else, I don't want to. What is happening with HIV right now is that, I've been living with HIV for 41 years. The institutions like San Francisco AIDS Foundation, and if you were not aware, I hope you become aware, The director of San Francisco East Foundation is getting $500,000 for salary. Is one of the biggest salaries in the whole country. We have 6,000 HIV long-term survivors in the San Francisco Bay Area. If they were given even $1,000 a year to every person, you have only $60,000 that can even be taken out of the $500,000 of a director. All of the HIV/AIDS agencies almost right now got new buildings, while many of the people with HIV or LGBTQ or many elders period in general are living under poverty levels. How can we do something about it? Because it's a dangerous territory, because there's also a lot of HIV cuts. So how can we balance this? Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, part of it. So again, in the short term, it's going to be actually trying to get money in the district, and this will be part of, like, there's a whole process in federal government for getting earmarks, right? And that's like how you get money back to, especially organizations that are helping folks in San Francisco. And my view on how earmarks should work is they should be prioritized for communities that are the most at need. So that's going to be people who are, living at or below poverty levels. It's going to be people in the Bayview, right? People who are traditionally have been cut out from that process. And I'm going to have an open and I'm going to have my general approach is have a roundtable of people from different communities, an open process, transparent process. So it's not going to be backroom deals. But in the long run, it can't just be. We can't just stop poverty through money coming into the district every year or two. We have to have the structural solution, and that's going to mean, I believe the federal government should directly be not just financing, but building housing that's permanently affordable for people, for survivors, for long-term survivors, and for HIV, positive seniors who are living with this for a long time. It's going to mean expanding Social Security benefits, which we could do right now if we remove the cap on Social Security, which currently someone who makes $160,000 a year pays the same amount into Social Security as someone making $5 million a year.
We cannot have more than $2,000 in the bank still, right now, right? $2,000 in the bank, and otherwise you have no right to certain benefits. $2,000 is like.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is that ultimately, you can't, the way we have our patchwork of benefits in this country, where there's these income cliffs, there's all, we just mentioned if you get more than $2,000 to the bank, it's completely broken. We have to actually have universal health care, so Medicare for all. You go to the doctor, and Medicare for all, I think, is just one step. I think we have to go beyond that to creating a national healthcare system where the government is directly providing healthcare. The cost, the essentials. My view is the essentials should be provided by the government for essentially free, right? That's the way to get at, the cost of healthcare, the cost of housing, the cost of utilities, the cost of groceries. I'm a fan of publicly funded grocery stores as well, and the cost of education. And, by the way, that's going to include medication. Part of the national healthcare system means that I think we should be, as a government, directly manufacturing a lot of medication as well. And that, this is some of the work I did small steps to work on when I worked in Congress. So this isn't helpful for people living with HIV, but one of the things we did work on was forcing the company Gilead, who's a creator, the monopoly that was manufacturing PrEP at the time, to create generics for that drug. We did a congressional hearing that basically made the case that PrEP was created through taxpayer funding. So the taxpayers actually have a patent claim on it. And that gave the DOJ enough of a legal framework to go after Gilead, and then that forced Gilead to release their patents years ahead of time, and we got to generic PrEP. And as you know, now we have the same problem going on with injectable PrEP, which could be, almost could eradicate HIV/AIDS if it was freely available to everybody. And I think when you have a drug like that, we should just be providing it to people, right? But yeah, it's going to require that sort of vision of the structural fixes to actually make it possible for people to live. So we're not just, scrapping for money every 2 or 4 years. It seems pie in the sky, but I think it's possible. That's why I'm running, because there's people running all over the country right now. There's a huge change moment, but it's going to require challenging not just Republicans, but also replacing a whole bunch of the corporate Democratic establishment as well. And that means, risking your own political career to do it. And that's what I'm willing to do. Like, I believe we have to do everything we can to get away from the nightmare we're in right now to actually building a different kind of society than what we had before. Because it wasn't great before either. I mean, people were suffering from the same reasons, as before Donald Trump got elected.
Mm-hmm. Could I just state quickly? I was on Art Agnos's Mayor's Task Force on the HIV epidemic. Myself and Dr. Goodland and I traveled to Washington, D.C. to lobby for the original Ryan White CARE Act fund. And, San Francisco, of course, has the historical position as an epicenter, of the HIV epidemic, and all of the research that's gone into it, including, research that suggests that there is a cure on the horizon. And it would be, so opportune to, loop back into that history, as part of, your campaign and reinvigorating an investment, in Ryan White type of funding. And then the idea about a publicly funded grocery store, you got to take that to Bayview Hunters Point. I mean, that's like, light bulb level, right now, for community, because it's the commercial retailer dynamic that keeps your major grocery stores from operating. So that's another idea. I did just want to say quickly with regard to the demolition of the Islas Creek Bridge. I wrote an article that includes you. I hope I have some permission. It was a clip from the Bayview Town Hall. And so I'm going to send you that article because it concisely summarizes issues around the building demolition, the 4-point protection plan, and the Islas Creek Bridge demolition. And to be candid with you, that bridge definitely, it does need to be demolished. It is just terribly degraded, it's seismically unstable, but the impacts to the community are just, it's going to landlock a community that's already landlocked in a food desert. And, how are you going to get emergency vehicles in, So, I did also want to, point out that is a key issue. The article I wrote is called The War at Home, just talks about, blowing up these structures. It looks like, little Gaza, what they're planning to do this year. So I'll send that to you. I'll send it to Nadia also.
Great. Yeah, no, I mean, of course, we have to fully fund the Ryan White program, and also HOPWA grants. Like, that's also been cut. HOPWA grants for senior housing for housing for folks with LGBTQ seniors. But I do think there's a chance here to go beyond kind of these patchwork programs to try to create a more a permanent fund, a more universal program that just provides these things to people. Because, as Jesus, like, working through these programs, doing the applications for it, trying to make sure you're eligible, it's itself a burden, and it's hard for especially low-income people to handle that when they have everything else going on. So, part of this for me is also I would love input on not just what do we refund, but like if we had a potential to do something new, what should I be advocating for as like the gold standard, right?
Okay. I'm one of those people that if I can help in some way, let me know. I'm definitely very involved, and I'm going to bring now very, very fast mental health. Did you know that, and you can ask any therapist right now that this is what is happening, the biggest problem right now in mental health in our community is not only about of course, in immigrants or Latinos, it's in many, many communities, is they are living in a bubble of fear and terror because the government, for so many different reasons, is making feel people, unsafe. So that is one of the major issues, currently, and many people, like you say, of your parents, I'm willing to live sometimes alone. Um, Sadly, during COVID, we had a lot of cuts about doctors leaving, nurses leaving, and now we don't have, especially in geriatrics and gerontology, we don't have enough people to help us in our things. They're even willing to pay for you to study geriatrics and gerontology. This is also something that we need to motivate somehow, because the largest amount of community we're getting older. I feel lucky to be right now with you two guys, to be able to at least have a more personal conversation in this way. I don't know when we have to end from my part. What I can tell you, Saikat, is also that it's not much about the new, but to bring together the old and the new, because the elders and the young people, we need to work together. We cannot be separate. And when we hear sometimes, maybe it's time for something new. Maybe it is the putting everything together and bring us together. And for me, the people, the ones that bring everyone together, those are the strongest, people in the world. But that's
That's
just
my
me.
hope. That's what I want to do. And it's obviously not going to be me. It's going to be all of us kind of working together in community. And,
Let me know how to
part
help.
of, sorry?
Let me know how to help.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, part of it is the campaign right now, but like after I'm a representative, I totally agree. Like part of what I'm trying to do through the campaign is like show how I plan to be a representative, right? And that's why I'm trying to be as
Yeah.
available as possible, doing these calls,
Thank
doing
you.
town halls everywhere, and then at some point I'd like to start building up kind of roundtables of experts and community leaders and folks who can advise me on this work. But it's really good to meet you. I do have to wrap it up because I have to run to something at 1. But
Doctor,
um,
my pleasure. I
Okay.
think I did make you and baby you.
Now to Nadia. So
yes, appreciate it.
good to see you. Bye-bye.
Good to see you,
Saikat,
Dr. Himsa.
thank you very
Very
much.
nice
I
to meet you,
appreciate
Jesus.
it. All right.
I'm
Thank
sure I'll
you.
see you again. All right, take care.
Right. So that was a conversation with Saikat, that is running for Congress and taking the role that Nancy Pelosi has been doing. So that will be interesting. I don't know what you guys think, but I would love to know what you guys think. So thank you. Love you all.